All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Bat Chat number two. Appreciate everyone who showed up last week and all the guests that I had. Excited to keep this going, hopefully on a weekly basis. So hopefully we'll also have some guests popping up as well today. A couple different topics I want to cover. First of all, as mentioned, I hope to do a Deathstroke comic review. I got an extra camera set up, hoping to take a look at the art and everything and go over some of the panels and pages. Been a huge Deathstroke fan for many, many years, so I want to start doing some comic reviews, not just talking about the story and like a brief summary, but digging into the art and panelization and all of that. I also want to give some script insight. So I showed some art from the new project last week, and so I want to actually show you guys kind of what my scripting process looks like. Go over one of the pages that I showed you guys and show how that lines up with the script. I also want to talk about influencers and rage baiters and how I think they're society's corroders, essentially. And then also talk about the Odyssey post viewing now that I've seen that. So that's the plan for the night. You bring on our first guest. We have
Yo,
Mr. Dan, Godful Universe. How's it going, man?
good man. Thanks for the invite.
Good, of course. How you been?
Man, I had the house to myself for the past couple of days. It's been great.
Oh, nice. And you guys are launching a book very soon, right?
Yep, the sign up page should be up in August. That's going to be called Man of Blood. It's going to be the rise and reign of King David. It'll be our first time doing a like issue series, like 24 pages floppy. We usually drop big fat books. This
Mhm.
one will be doing, I think, about 6 to 8 issues. It's going to be depending on how we crop the story at the end.
Okay, nice.
Yep. It's kind of be like a. It's kind of like the story of David meets 300.
Nice. Very
Yeah,
cool. And what
focusing. I was gonna say focusing mostly on like the battles he won and did. It's gonna be very gory and fun.
nice. Right up my alley, it sounds like. Where are you guys gonna be launching it at? What crowdfunder?
Well, the Indiegogo has become such a pain in the neck. We're gonna do Kickstarter, Fund My Comic, and I think
Hmm,
BackMeBro is up, so I might see if they'll host that. But I mean,
okay.
Indiegogo is just such a nightmare now.
Yeah. I mentioned last week when we were chatting with everyone, I'm definitely hesitant to use that. I may do a sign up page there, at least until Back Me Bro is got that option for me. But
Hmm.
I'll probably do a sign up page there and on Kickstarter. Same thing next couple of weeks here and uh, kind of see how it goes. But I would like to avoid running a campaign on Indiegogo after seeing all the feedback and even just trying to back a campaign on there, updating addresses. It's just I don't know why they tried to fix what wasn't broken. I mean, if they wanted to kind of change the direction of the site or make some improvements, I could see it, but like it ran very, very smoothly as at least as a creator. Like I really enjoyed using Indiegogo for a campaign. Uh, but now it's I don't know.
I did too. Whenever we first started, we didn't even use Kickstarter because Indiegogo was so easy to use and so easy for new people because you didn't have to have an account to back books on Indiegogo, and you
Mhm.
did have to have one to do it for Kickstarters. And we knew a bunch of people that weren't. They didn't back things, and they were going to back our books. So we're like, look, we'll just do this. So you don't have to make an account. But I mean, I was thinking at the day, I wish I could remember what it was about. But I was thinking, like, good lord, like it's like everything, but the quality of everything has just gotten worse. It's
Mhm.
every time anyone tries to fix anything or improve something, it just makes everything worse.
Yep. Yeah, it's wild what they did to that website. I mean, when when we both used it in the past, it was like just even the shipping aspect of it, right? It was so convenient to put in the tracker number, the tracking number. That way, the backer immediately got that, and it wasn't that difficult to update delivery address. But now, I don't even. Again, I don't even want to bother with it. But um, yeah. So, did you see the Odyssey since we spoke last week? Now that it's out.
I did not. I went and saw End of Evangelion instead. That's the one thing that I completely geek out over is Evangelion. That is my if I'm gonna buy physical crap, if I'm gonna like nerd out, that's my thing. So
Nice.
I have nothing against the Odyssey. Like this whole this whole stupid tirade thing. I think I mentioned it before. Is I'm just not a big fan of Nolan. I've got my own
Hmm.
hesitations about him. I think he's a great director. He's highly talented.
Hmm.
Something about his style just does not hit for me, and it hasn't hit since Batman.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I'm not. What am I doing? I want to trash like the super successful, like most like visionary director of our age, like, as if I could make movies. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, based on you not being a fan of his previous works, whether or not you'd like it. Did you see Oppenheimer? I can't recall.
I did, and
Okay.
it's. I thought it was well made, but for me, I think I said it in another group chat. Like to me, Nolan's cold style conflicts for me with
Mm.
the warmth he tries to do. I'm more of a Kubrick guy, where Kubrick's like, it's cold, everyone's evil, and society sucks, so it's cold.
Mhm. Yeah, so, yeah, I guess in regards to that, I will say that the Odyssey was a lot deeper than I expected. He definitely traveled some different avenues than the previous adaptations or translations, more so in a exploring the effects of war on society, on a man himself, versus just it's a warrior that just there's bloodshed. He gets through the war, he comes back a hero. It's more of it was so nasty that he had to block it out of his mind until he was ready to face the reality of the Trojan horse and everything, and he becomes kind of self-aware of wow, what we did is actually going to play a role in damaging civilization. And he witnessed his soldiers do some very horrid things that went against, his morals. And in the end, instead of just taking back the throne, saying, "Oh, I'm king now, everything's great," instead, he decides, "I'm going to go and try to not just repent, but uh, make things better, to kind of make up for what we did to try to save civilization and prevent further downfall." So I like that he had a like the chemistry between him and Penelope, Anne Hathaway was fantastic. It had a very heartwarming touch to it from both sides of that.
Hmm.
Same thing in regards to him and his son. So it was definitely much deeper than surface level in regards to like the emotions and it having some warmth to it. And I think that was intentional on his part versus just following the previous adaptations. But I'd say overall, all of the controversy obviously manufactured for the most part. The like page casting, for example, distracting at the beginning, when the character's still alive because the voice just doesn't fit. The look isn't really that much of a problem because you understand at least the appearance. It does line up with the character and the intention of the character, but the voice just throws it off. And that happens with some background characters throughout the movie too, where just the voice and how the lines are delivered, you're like, okay, this just it's distracting. But the visuals, the storyline, and the music were so enthralling that it was like that distraction was like a blip and you get pulled right back in. Where other movies, you don't really get enough into it, um, to not allow those distractions to ruin the movie for you. But I will say Paige's acting in like the later part of the film. especially when they're in Hades, was actually really really cool. So I will give kudos to that. But again, the whole Helena Troy thing, it was I think she had 3 minutes of screen time. The acting was actually really really good. Um, and I think everyone obviously got hung up on the race aspect of it. But the one thing I do like that Nolan did, and I know a lot of guys won't necessarily agree with this, is he didn't cake the women with makeup, right? He didn't try to overdo it. He actually made it look realistic to the time period where it almost looked like none of the women had makeup on at all.
Mm.
Um, which I appreciate that because right when you're if people are going to complain like, oh, it doesn't make sense that there's like a black woman in Greece, right? Okay, I can understand that complaint, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, you have this woman that literally has modern makeup on, eyeliner, and all these things that didn't exist then. It's like, well, okay, you know, you can't really say one's okay and not the other's not, if you want it to be realistic. But and the complaint around like Zendaya's casting, actually, it made a ton of sense, and there's too many spoilers, I guess, tied to it, but her casting was actually really good, and I love what he did with that with Athena, with the character. It's not what anyone would have expected. And I also think similar to Snyder's movies, a lot of people won't actually understand, um, the connection to her character throughout the story. So there's a lot of, like, Easter eggs and stuff like that. But overall, it was the shortest 3-hour film I've ever seen. It was that, like, intense.
Oh
So
yeah, all I've heard for the most part since it's come out is like praise and
mhm,
just complete deflation of this completely manufactured outrage. Like, I mean, like the Zendaya thing, I think is funny just because she's in everything. So I think that can be a
right.
funny meme.
Mhm,
But like the Helen of Troy thing, like yeah, it's weird. But honestly, here's my thing, man. Like I was talking with Josh, my artist about this because we talk all the time, and he's like the main friend I can talk to about art and stuff is, and I say this as an anime fan, anime gets, and the reason I'm saying it this way is because it's the biggest thing that is in our culture right now for like art. It gets a massive pass just because it's from Japan. There are
right.
so many things in it, and there's lots of things like that where if we scrutinized it the way we scrutinize our own media, it would just be continuously on blast.
Mhm,
And there's just this. I get, man. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna be too long winded if I let myself go. But people, it seems like the online critic type, they live in this dream world where everything was magical in the '90s. And
mhm,
I was in the '90s, and it's like everything they complain about, like woke, feminism, all that, that was already there. It's been in our
mhm.
culture since like the '60s.
Yeah, do people not remember the Cinderella film where Brandy was casted?
And I
Like,
loved that film. Like
yeah.
when I was
Like,
a kid, like I loved Brandy. Like that was like I was like, oh, she's like great.
well,
She was like
and
one of
she
my
got
crushes when I
cast
was a kid.
right, and she got cast because she was popular at the time, and, well, that's part of what Nolan obviously did. He pulled probably 75% of the castings from his previous films, which he has a habit of doing because he is very particular, and rightfully so, and then the other ones are right characters or actresses that are gonna market the film, right? It's gonna pull in people because of name recognition. So it makes sense why he did it. And I almost think he almost like purposely trolled people because I remember when Oppenheimer came out, he had the opposite criticism. There were people getting all upset because there were no people of color or different ethnicities in Oppenheimer, which, right? This was a documentary. He made it as, one to one as possible. And I almost wonder if he did this just to make everyone freak out and get that reaction factor. I mean, if so, I mean, he definitely succeeded in riling people up.
Well, I mean, what you just described, like. I mean, that goes back to the first days of Hollywood. I mean, I'll use
Mhm.
this phrase, and it sounds crueler than it is, but I mean, nepotism's always been part of it, and I mean that in like the sense of like people they know that they've worked with before.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
they were they were casting, was it what's his name, John Wayne, as like a
Genghis Khan.
Mong
Yep.
yeah, as Genghis Khan and stuff. It was like, why would you do that? Because he's the biggest actor on the planet and he's great. So
Yep.
make him look like a Chinaman and put him on a horseback, you know?
Well, and it's so funny, and this is where again a lot of the right wing influencers and all of them, they're like, oh, just put Sydney Sweeney in. It's like she can't act. Like she's not a good actress. Like I can guarantee you that, um, and I'd butcher her name, the gal that was in this,
Yeah, I
in
don't
this
know her
film
name.
as Helena Troy, did a much better job than Sweeney would have ever have done. Like people have become so, I don't know, numb to talent that they're just like, oh, boobs, cast her, and it's like, yeah, that's really how we're going to get successful films and better art. Just going off surface level stuff.
Well, it's like the people started praising Troy, the movie, out of nowhere because of this,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I enjoy it for what it is, but Troy is more disrespectful to the Iliad than this is to the Odyssey, particularly in how it treats like the culture and how it treats the gods. Like everyone who
Mhm,
believes in the gods in Troy is a moron or a fool.
mhm,
And
mhm,
Achilles isn't a demigod, and they change it like every time the gods intervened in Troy, it's completely removed from the Iliad. It's completely removed from Troy, and I
mhm,
like it because it's Brad Pitt, fighting people and being awesome. But
mhm,
I don't know, like I've been exploring this kind of thing too, man. Like what really shook me awake to how crazy these influencers are, especially just on Twitter, is the Lord of the Flies debate. If you saw any of that, it was
mm,
this idea somehow magically came out of nowhere. People were saying that William Golding tried to rape a girl, and then like he wrote Lord of the Flies because he hated schoolboys, and
hmm,
none of that's true. It's like, and they say this subversive idea to say that English white boys are savages, and it's like none of you read the book, and that happened a couple of months ago, and like it was a whole thing with a lot of these guys. And I just realized, like, these people, none of these people know anything. They don't read, they don't watch what they're talking about. They just take
mhm,
something they see, and then they act like those Indian promotion accounts where they just blow things up over and over and over
mhm.
for clickbait.
Yep. Yeah, and the one thing, yeah, and I think folks that were really into Inception will see a lot of parallels actually to Odysseus's journey and story in the Odyssey. And what's ironic to me is that, with all these again right wing influencers and bots, as far as I'm concerned, are pushing that this is woke and bad for society. There's actually a lot of Christian overtones in this film. Like it actually pushes a lot of Christian morals, and it was actually modified in many ways to push Christian values in comparison to previous adaptations. So personally, I appreciate that. I enjoyed the film more so because of that. So it had that aspect of it, and it was also almost like an not anti-war message, but a anti-unnecessary war message, and to basically show the consequences of doing that, which is extremely relevant, right? Because the only reason that the war happened at Troy was because there was a pact between the different kings that if anything ever happened to Helen, right, they would do whatever it takes, right, basically to defend her. And so they went to war over a woman, which to me is comparable to like, hey, they went to war over oil, or they went to war over, opioids. And in the process of doing so, instead of just overthrowing the city and only attacking soldiers, right, and those in power, they end up killing civilians, including women and whatnot. Which again, very relative to the wars that we've had in the last 20 years, because a lot of that has happened as well. So I thought there was a really good message in that of, hey, there's consequences, and we should try to basically avoid those scenarios. Welcome strangers, be neighbors, all that stuff. But there's a lot of messaging in my opinion, that I think is very um, relevant to today, and I think that was on purpose. And he has a habit of doing that. So,
Yeah, I don't think Nolan has like a big political message. I
mm-mm,
certainly don't think he has a woke political message. And
nope.
and I'm going to ask this just so I'm clear, and I got a point for you. You're Catholic, correct?
No, I'm Russian Orthodox. It's
Orthodox.
very
Okay, sorry.
similar. Yeah,
Well, what
I
I
used to be
and
Catholic. So.
oh, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, long story short, with that, I can we could sit here and discuss like the both sides of like Christian messaging and art, and how like left wing wokeism can wear Christianity as a skin suit. And there is a
Mhm,
problem that since World War II, like America has not been allowed to have a just war. And, everything has been demoralizing to that effect that there is no good war, there's no just war. But I say that to say, like, you know, the the I'm I guess technically a Protestant, but the
mhm,
thing is, the reason that discussion doesn't mean much to me is because anyone can say anything's Christian because of Protestantism.
mhm,
So the same thing I see this with Nolan is like the dissolution of narrative, and this is what kind of bothers me is this is what has bothered me day one with this kind of like anti woke crowd idea that I'm tying all this together. So give me a second. Is
mhm,
they will not just watch something, look at it, and say what is from this, like what is the director trying to say, what are the themes here, what are the archetypes that go back and back and back and back with this. It's always
mhm,
there's an assumed narrative, and it's always that narrative is bad.
mhm,
And
mhm,
again, we could sit here and make 40 different interpretations of this film. I haven't seen it.
mhm,
But or you can take something, was it a good piece of art, did
mhm,
it work, did it entertain, did it do its job, and
mhm.
then we can kind of critique some things we don't care for. But that doesn't sell. That
Right.
kind of lack of outrage does not sell.
Yeah, and that's the thing there. It's the selling of the outrage, and I miss the days of when it was just Roger and Ebert, right, giving
Yep.
their honest opinions. People would watch them, and it didn't ever really, I don't think, dissuade people from going, but they were just intrigued to hear about it. And in some cases, it would get people more excited. But back then, people were just happy that there was a film in the theaters, something big, right? And today, you have all these people manufacturing these narratives to purposely prevent folks from watching films. And yeah, maybe originally it was okay, we're trying to prevent people from seeing woke films and blah blah blah. But then it grew into, hey, every film is this because we've caught like one crumb of this in the trailer. That means the whole thing is horrible. And then they wonder why some of the good films don't get as much money as they should. It's like, well, because you pulled people out of their seats. But then it's laughable when films like this make a killing in money despite their efforts. And I think sooner rather than later that those people are going to lose the steam of their voice, because like movies like this that come out completely reveal their true intentions. Because again, there is nothing woke in his film, in his messaging. You want to say the casting is, I don't care, that's fine, go ahead and say that, but that is such a small aspect of the film. Uh, I'm just happy to have a fun story and a big film with big music, big visuals, and someone that's doing it traditionally. All these people, and it's so funny, all these, and I'll have to have a separate stream on this topic, is right? All these right wing folks pushing AI films. And it's like, really? You want to call yourself conservative and say that you stand for traditions when you're promoting something that takes away human creativity, human jobs, and money from humans? Ultimately, it's like, no, you're actually pissing on the arts by doing that. You should want more Christopher Nolans, right? Maybe if we could get some more film directors and writers like him that want to do practical effects, that want to do things, fully in IMAX and things like that, that it would get more excitement around films. But for them, it's like, oh, James Gunn film, woohoo! Like that's about as deep as they go, and that's not helping.
No, and I liked your analysis that you did even before you saw it, where you were like, look, basically, you kind of predicted it was succeeding despite like the current zeitgeist, despite the quote unquote woke influence. Like, you don't get awards, you don't even get nominated without a certain casting quota. You don't get
Mhm.
a film greenlit without a certain casting quota. This is
Mhm.
Nolan succeeding in your review, succeeding despite those limitations.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Everyone's point, and they did the same thing with Snyder. This is how stupid people are, right? They all blame Snyder for Batman vs Superman for it being confusing in the theaters, and it's like, hello, it had nothing to do with him. That is the studio. It's the same case here. Christopher Nolan gets basically told like, "Hey, we'll give you this huge, big budget film. You know, we want you to do something huge. What do you want to do?" And he's like, "I want to do the Odyssey, right?" And they say, "Okay, we'll do that, but you have to do A, B, and
Hmm.
C." And he does the minimum possible, right? So maybe casting some people with extremely small roles, you know, so that he can bring his dream to life and his story to life. You cannot blame him. Most of us would do the exact same thing at the chance to bring our dream in front of people.
Oh,
And
and
all those
again,
people
that's
that are
always
mad should
existed.
be mad at the studio. They should not be mad at him. They should be mad at those who make the rules, right? Not the player that is just trying to navigate it.
Oh yeah, and again, that's always existed. There are always
Mhm,
directors or studios, not directors, but there are always studios that were like, "Hey, you've got to cast, Lily Allen or whoever, whatever her name is, like not Lily
mhm,
Allen, Grace Kelly. That's what I'm thinking of. As
mhm,
you got to cast so and so. The only way this movie gets made is and so may be because she's the it girl or the it guy, or it may be because so and so's dad owns
mhm.
stock in the studio, or
Well,
so and so voted a certain way or says a certain way. Like that's always existed. And I
yep,
agree with you. Like as an artist, it's really a pain to like who cares what the woke or anti woke think about art, especially me as an artist. Like Christopher Nolan is not staying up at night wondering what the critical drinker thinks about his film.
no, no, not at all. Yeah, it's again, yeah, and they've done the same thing to Snyder. They try to blame him for things that, were decisions from the studio, and it just shows how uninformed and how lazy that, these people are. But again, it fits their narrative to push the rage bait, and it's
They
all
don't
because
make art either.
they're all desperate to just get Twitter bucks, right, or just a little bit of money from YouTube monetization. That's it. And it's all happening because of the people like Critical Drinker and Neurotic that have actually made a career out of doing it, and all these people are just trying to duplicate it.
Oh yeah,
And
I mean, and like his name's been dead for a while now, but I mean, making a comic pretty much like shut Ripa up from like commentary
mhm,
because it's like, okay, turns out you can't do it, can you?
mhm.
It's
Well,
like,
and now that he has a publishing deal with a liberal company, he's got to watch what he says.
yeah, so he's destroyed everything. Like the kind of grift is done. It's like you don't even get to go back to what made you famous in the
Mhm.
first place. And I mean that's
Which
just
means
the
it was a
danger
lack
of it,
of
man.
talent, because
Oh
that's the
yeah.
thing. Christopher Nolan would still make a phenomenal movie. Memento is, proof right there. even
Yeah,
if he didn't have the
following.
big budget. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
he did his first one on like a shoestring, and it's like one guy and a camera basically.
Yep. So it's like, we should want more films from folks like him. And his next film, we'll see if it's going to be an existing story or if he'll make, again, most of his films have been original stories and ideas. And he's one of the very few that write and direct his films and produce. And I guarantee you, if we had a competition between Elon Musk with his own money and Christopher Nolan with his own money making the best film possible, Nolan is going to blow him out of the water because he has talent. So,
Oh yeah, that's the main thing you can't talk about is talent and inherent value, and that's the thing. Inherent skill is the great man of history theory is proven just by George Lucas. I mean, people get
mhm,
mad at him, I think, recently, but like, here's the thing: like
mhm,
Disney with their billions could not replicate what he did twice. And you don't
yeah,
have to. People don't have to like the prequels. And I get in this argument all the time on Twitter. It's like people are, oh, the sequels were bad. Like, no, the sequels weren't bad. They
no,
were good enough. Most importantly,
mhm,
they were Star Wars, and they were
yep,
so Star Wars. They had successful games, they had successful toys and shows and merch that are still selling to this day.
mhm,
That guy
yep,
did that.
yep. And that's what's so funny. And, you know, with all these rage baiters that just sit there and blame Kathleen Kennedy, blame Disney, it's like, no, you can't necessarily blame them fully. They take some responsibility, but the man that's responsible for the downfall of Star Wars is the man that created Star Wars because he just handed it over for a paycheck. Now, I can't blame the guy in a sense, but at that point, right, he's already rich. So wouldn't you want to preserve the legacy of of your story, right? Of everything that you've created? And that's something that I don't think Nolan would ever do. Nolan is the type of guy that would refuse to use AI. He refuses to use CGI as much as he can, and he's actually refused to work with certain studios because he didn't want to be told what to do on everything. That's why he stepped away, from superhero films. He got burned out a bit because, they started, getting a little too heavy-handed in regards to directing him, and he didn't like that. But I think he has that integrity where, he wouldn't just hand over his original stories and let somebody desecrate them. But it seems like Lucas didn't have an issue with that. So it's like everybody that's sitting there worshiping Lucas, but then criticizing Kennedy and Disney, they need to be actually criticizing the man that handed it over because he had to have known that there was a possibility that that would have happened. And I sure as hell, if I was already like, okay, it's one thing if you don't have money, you're an indie, and someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna pay you big bucks to own your property." I wouldn't blame anyone for handing over their property. Right? People got to take care of their families. But someone that's already extremely wealthy that hands it over to me, that means they didn't really care that much about what they created, at least in my opinion.
Well, I think you're right about. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent on George Lucas, but like, I think Star Wars was such a massive fluke to him that like, because he's been making films since Star Wars, like little indie films in his ranch that he loves.
Mhm.
And I think Star Wars just honestly didn't mean that much to him. I mean, I think that he loved the story that he made, but like he'd made American Graffiti, he'd made was it THX-118, whatever it is. Like
Mhm.
he'd made films before, and he kept making films afterward. I think he's kind of like this nerd that just likes making films, and like I don't think Star Wars meant he didn't grow up with it as a kid. It wasn't his King Arthur Knights of the Round Table, so I think to him it was like something. He's like, I'll sell it for 3 billion.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Yep. But that's the thing, all those rage baiters, they weren't gonna make as much money or get as much attention by just being honest about the cause behind all of it, right? They had to point it at the woke Disney or the woke Kathleen Kennedy. It's like that's only part of it. Honestly, that's only part of it.
Oh yeah, and going back to with Christopher Nolan. Okay, let's say Nolan. Let's say it's 1955. Nolan is given the Odyssey. None of the stuff they
Mhm.
complain about would be in it because it wasn't his decision. It would be like a
Mhm.
different studio, and they'd have different things, and it would. And it, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like that's just here's the, like the whole culture war thing. I see people still talking about it like, oh, the right won the culture war, but why does it feel like we're losing? Because you didn't win the culture war. The culture war wasn't left versus right trying to seize power of culture. It was
Mhm.
the left was already in control, and now they're exerting a little too much force, and some people are pushing back.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Hollywood's gonna always be Hollywood. Like
Mhm.
that's not gonna change, and there might be some extreme things, but I don't know, man. Like, and see, I have a slightly different take on AI. I don't think AI is art. I think
Mhm.
if someone, I think people can make cool stuff with it. I think people can do promos with it and marketing. I think
Mhm.
that's fine, but I wouldn't call that art. The
Mhm.
only like, but at the same time, like I've seen Emily Eucas use it, and she's an animator, and she's made her own show called the Will Stancil Show because she animated for like 20 years. She knows how to use it well, and it's a pretty punk rock idea, like what she's done. So I guess what I'm saying is I could see both spectrums of it. I could see someone using it really, 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 really well in the future. But at the same time, I'm with you. I think you've got to have these Artur guys that are holding the line of like old school ways of doing things. And you should praise that. The problem I think comes down to is that these people, like the grifters and this, I hate to say individual people, but this culture is just of critique. And it's exactly, and this is what
Mhm.
really bothers me about the big anti woke crowd. Is like, if you know the history of quote unquote woke, it's the culture of critique. It doesn't build, it just tears down. And that's what you're doing over here.
Well, the other thing is by manufacturing all the rage and the criticism pre-film release, it almost protects them from criticism themselves, right? Because if they were honest, like Roger and Ebert, and they waited until they actually saw the film, everyone would be able to call them out in real time on their bullshit. But the fact that they do it months and weeks before the film, by the time people have watched it, what they've said is basically long gone on the you know
Hmm.
Twitter in Twitter world, unless somebody saved it, bookmarked it, and brought it back, which some do, of course. But if they were to do it at the same time that people were actually watching it, so many people would run them over the coals, which is happening right now with Odyssey. And this is one thing I really appreciate about this film happening is that you have a lot of big names and just average folks just raking all of these rage baiters over the coals, all these idiots that said, "Oh, I'm going to delete my account if it makes over 200 million," and it's like all these people are getting caught on their lies, and that's what we need. And no other film director would have been able to achieve that because most of them would have actually, well, fully bent the knee to a studio. But the only reason Nolan agreed to do this film was because he wanted to have a lot of control over it. And if they would have tried to get him to do too many things that he didn't like, he just would have said, "Okay, I'll do the other project I had in mind." That's what he's done in the past. So,
Oh yeah. Well, it's the same thing we've seen in our own sphere. Like people who fret over, and that's the big thing. I'm so tired of art being talked about in dollar amounts. When I see
mhm,
some
mhm,
account on Twitter talk about how much movie money a movie's making, like I just like block or mute them. Like, dude, I don't
mhm,
care. Like, what? Who are you? Like, are you Richie Rich? Like, dude, like, this is the most nerd crap I've ever seen. That you're tracking numbers for a movie.
mhm,
Like, my
mhm.
favorite movies didn't make any money. Like,
Oh
my
yeah, yeah. We
favorite.
talked. I don't know if you. I think you were on there when we were talking about last week, but "Man from Uncle" by Guy Ritchie,
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal film. Didn't make shit in the theaters, but I saw it 3 times in the theaters because it was so good. Even The Accountant didn't make a lot of money, but it became, almost like a cult classic of a sense, and that's why Amazon made the second one. But, there's amazing films that barely make any money, and then there's horrible films, as we know, like Captain Marvel and whatnot, that they make a ton of money, but they're not good.
No, I mean, I'm a big Fight Club fan because I grew up in that era, and it's like, okay, like that's one of the best movies ever made ever, and it bombed at the box office. And
Mhm, mhm,
that used to just be, we used to have a term for that, which is called a cult classic.
mhm,
I think
mhm.
Rocky Horror Picture Show like bombed. I think Little Shop of Horrors didn't do great. Like there's
Well,
all kinds of these things.
Watchmen didn't do
Yeah.
that good in the theater, and look at it now, you
Well,
know?
so many of Snyder's films like don't do what they think they'll
Yeah.
do, and then they just sell out of the physical media sales
Mhm,
or in the
mhm,
streaming sales, and it's like people pick up on it and they love it, and it's like, oh, that's a testament to a good film.
mhm. Yeah, and some people just make films in a way that it's just almost too early, right? If Watchmen woulda came out 10 years ago or now, it would do really, really well in the theater. Same with 300. I even think Sin City would do better now than it did when it was released in theaters. I think they were just kind of too early in terms of the release and I think the internet would have helped those films. Whereas back then the internet wasn't a big thing. You didn't have a lot of social media or any at all. And so there wasn't as much of a light shined on them. So
Oh yeah, and like that's just how. Let me see what he's saying when it comes to certain films. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you're
Mhm.
gonna tell me the Odyssey isn't gonna like do gangbusters and DVD and Blu-ray sales
Oh, yeah. It will.
and
Oh, yeah.
streaming?
I mean, every Nolan film does. I mean, people criticize Tenet because that was his worst performing film in the theaters, but it was also like I think it was right before or around the edge of COVID, um, I believe, because he has a film every 3 years, so I think it would have been 2020 when that came out. So, if that's the case, then that would have severely impacted it. But it still streams very well, and people, I mean, it's still known. Even if it's clunky to some people, it's known for a reason because he has a unique way of doing his films. Some love it, some don't like it, but yeah. So Skullgrin says, despite my problems with the Odyssey, I did have a good time with it in the moments. That really did work. So I imagine that once it makes it to the home video, that will skyrocket. And he's one of the folks that I've had good conversations with, through Twitter on this film. Is you can have people that can watch it and just be honest and say, okay, A, B, and C didn't hit well with me. I give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10, but I still enjoyed it. You know, it's everyone's either all the way one way or all the way the other. Myself, like if I were to rate it out of 10, I'd give it an 8.5. Very few films for me hit that 9 or higher. The Accountant is one that for me is like probably almost a 10. I just absolutely loved that film. BVS would be up there as well. Um, Inception to me would be like a 9, but it's like most people, all these rage baiters, they can't even admit that something good happened to the film. Everything's horrible, the worst ever, destroying civilization, blah 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 blah. They just can't say, "Oh well, I didn't like this aspect, but I loved the visuals, or I loved the music, or I loved this scene," because they've all had. They're either extremely disingenuous, which is very likely, or they've actually brainwashed themselves to only look for the negative, to only nitpick. And if so, those are people that will not be able to even catch good art. And they're also the people that won't promote good art. And I can't imagine living like that. Like that just sounds horrible.
No, that's that internet influence, man. Like I even saw, I forget who it was. It was a guy on a show I was watching, and they were talking about soft power and through influence. And his point was like, hey, give me $1 million, and I'll have bought out 5 to 10 YouTubers. And by the end of like 2 months, I'll have them saying exactly what I want them to say. That even when I stop paying them, they'll keep saying that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like that's just a harsh truth in the modern world. Is like you can just pay people and incentivize them online in particular if they're talking
Mhm.
heads, and you can get them thinking things because they'll say it so much their thinking will change. And that's kind of like that's literally an Orwellian idea, not in like the douchey sense, but in the proper sense.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think about that a lot. I think, and we have there's a simpler term for that called audience capture. And I think that's what 99% of this stuff is. And I'm not trying to rag on people so much, but like, let's say like the Daily Wire, right? I know some people are like fans of them, but like, I'm using them as an example. It's like 90% of their staff, if not more, are like theater kids or like
Mm-hmm.
ex actors. And you have
Ones
to
that have
take,
failed to get into
yeah,
Hollywood or succeed. Yeah.
yeah, and you
They're
extrapolate
bitter.
that across the board, and you're like, okay, that's what Candace Owens is. And we know
Mm-hmm.
that's on the like the left wing. We know those are like theater kids, but it's also on here too. It's like people you see that are just saying things all the time. Like you're a man, BA. I'm a man. I can't sit here and talk about things forever. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have
Mm-hmm.
an opinion on everything, but there's people, like, and it's like you haven't. There's no way you sat with this idea and interrogated it for like months, days, weeks, years before you just spouted off on it.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm glad you said this, Skullgrin. He says, but I'm not um, maybe pushing so like passively aggressive about the movie enough to drag it through the dirt. People forget that this is not the only adaptation of the Odyssey that we have. 33 adaptations, and that's where I don't think people are seeing the silver lining. All the rage baiters or the people that are against this film is this is actually going to make people younger generation especially, right? Because you're going to have a lot of teenagers and those in their 20s watch this film, and it's actually going to get them interested in Greek mythology.
Hmm.
Because a lot of folks, right, especially if they go to small schools like I did growing up, they don't get exposed to Greek, literature or mythology as a kid. And so I actually think this is going to get people to go back and read a lot of these different adaptations and stories that otherwise wouldn't have been triggered to do so. So all these people saying, "Oh, it's disrespecting Greece and people hate the Greeks now and blah blah blah, they're pissing on history." In fact, I actually think it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to bring appreciation to the stories because the younger generations now have a reason to learn more about Helen of Troy, to learn more about Odysseus, to learn more about Achilles, to go back and watch the older films and actually read the older literature. Otherwise, they'd be too interested in what's the next movie coming out, right? I even at the end of the film was like, you know what? I want to do some research and learn more about this character or learn more about that character, learn more about this storyline, and even understand parts of the film in a deeper sense. If this film wouldn't have came out, nothing would have triggered that interest. So that's the one thing that none of these folks are either realizing or willing to admit is that this is actually going to bring positive attention to the literature that they're saying he's desecrating, which he absolutely didn't, in my opinion. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean I've got my copy of the Iliad. Um, Picked it up after watching Troy, and then like the Odyssey got announced, all that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, well I'm gonna get the Odyssey and the Aeneid because I've read the Odyssey before, and I've gone through the Iliad before, not 100% the way I should have when I was younger, but I've never
Mhm.
read the Aeneid or however you say it, and I was like, okay, well I'll pick that up now and I'll check it out, and I mean I'm still not seeing this film, but just it being in the zeitgeist, I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick up the Aeneid because I've never read it.
Mhm.
I don't. I'm butchering this Greek title, whatever, however you say it, but it's a trilogy. I mean, I've always had, Virgil's some of Virgil's stuff before, not all of it, and I've got
Mhm.
Dante, and that kind of stuff. But that's the thing is like these same like a lot of these guys, I see people like that will complain about this will post like scenes from the Dante's Inferno anime that was from the video game, and it's
Mhm.
nothing like Dante's Inferno. Like it's 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 nothing like it. And I think if I could be wrong, I think Satan actually wins at the end of that one. I could be wrong, but it's something weird like that. It, but
Well,
you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
well, along the same lines, right? You have all these people complaining that like Matt Damon got casted, which by the way, Matt Damon did a amazing job. People don't realize his depth as an actor and how versatile he is. This was right in line with like how great of a job he did in The Martian, for example. Um, you know, we uh, we bought a zoo. I think was one of them. That was actually a really good emotional film. Uh, Also Interstellar. Like the guy is a phenomenal actor. They'll criticize that, and then the next post they're praising Troy, which is Brad Pitt and like literally all
Mhm.
American, non-Greek European actors. It's like total hypocrisy. Like you guys make absolutely no sense. It's an American film. It makes sense. Again, they're going to cast likely American actors or just big name actors, regardless of their ethnicity or whatever. They're trying to put people in the seats. That's their job. So,
Oh yeah, and this is my big point of contention, especially with the right wing and
mm,
it's they don't understand art, and I hate to say that because that's such a trope. It's like no, there are artists who are right wing, and I can name them and defend to the death. You know, you and I are
mm,
here for a reason, right? But there's something about people, I think it's left and right, that when they get political and like cultural war brain rot, I think these are people. Like, it's not that I'm saying conservatives or right wing don't understand art, and it's not that I'm saying that like progressives and wokies don't understand art, but I think people who just don't understand art are super attracted to politics, if that makes sense.
mhm, mhm. Yep, I agree. How's it going? Yeah, it'll be interesting. I again, my I'd have to pull up the tweet, but my predictions were that Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, and Holland and Bernthal would
Hmm.
all do a phenomenal job acting. I stick by that, especially Damon and Hathaway. Hathaway was, I mean, one of the best acting jobs I've ever seen. It was really really good. I do think it's going to make a billion. It's going to surpass a billion. I think it's already outpacing Oppenheimer, and a lot of folks doubted that that was going to make a billion. And I thought that the uh, all the craziness around the casting was going to be very minor, and it was just going to be a couple minutes of the film, which was true. I'll
Yeah.
admit again, it was distracting from time to time with voices. Some of the lines were delivered, but you get pulled right back into it to where it's a blip. Could he have done certain things better? For sure. One thing I will actually criticize was some of the fighting sequences. I do think, and we saw this, I think, in the Batman trilogy. If you were to
Yeah.
compare Nolan and Snyder in regards to fight choreography, Snyder is like godlike, which we saw in Watchmen. We saw that with especially the warehouse scene in BBS, right?
Hmm.
Where Nolan, his is more almost stiff in my opinion. He doesn't change the camera view a lot. He doesn't zoom in a ton. Obviously, doesn't do slow motion, which makes sense for the Odyssey, but it was like a double-edged sword with like the big fight at the end with all the suitors. I remember watching it and sometimes not being able to tell if some of the enemy hits with swords or you know pikes or whatever actually hit Damon. Like it was just hard to tell. Part of you was like, oh crap, is he hit or is he not? Like the confusion was almost exciting because it was such a tense scene. But after the film, I was like, man, I really wish they would have zoomed in right on some of the blows, on some of the fight sequences, and just changed the POV of the camera a couple times. Like Snyder does such a good job in, you know, going from one shot to another and making sure he hits like every angle of the fight scene. And I think that is one thing that he was lacking on. Now, part of it could have been the fact that he was actually constrained by the length of the film. He could not go beyond 3 hours. I guess that's like the max of the IMAX reel. Um, so I think he actually had to condense and almost speed up certain parts to make sure he got as much as he could in there. I almost similar to BBS. I wish this film would have been split into 2.5 hour films because he could have went even deeper with some of the parts of the film, like the cannibal giants on the one island, for example. Like it would have been great to see that extended by 10 minutes, maybe an extra 5 minutes on Cyclops, things of that nature. but yeah, it was definitely enjoyable. So
Yeah, and filming and filming combat are two different things. Filming dialogue is
mhm,
different. Some people
yep,
are great at it. You know, Snyder is great at it. Some
hmm,
people aren't. I mean, probably most directors aren't because most films don't have combat, to be honest. And I don't know. That's a whole thing. And like, yeah, Nolan. I think his Batman worked because his Batman, at least in Batman Begins, fought in the darkness, and he was a
hmm,
ninja for most of it. And
hmm,
but I could see that. Like again, I haven't seen the Odyssey, but I could see that. It's here's I don't know. I'm just. It seems like the criticisms have to keep jumping to the ideological because no one can really find technical problems with the film.
right. Yeah, and before I forget the thought, I do hope one day we see the team up though of Snyder and Nolan again,
Oh yeah,
because that was what was so great about Man of Steel, right? You had Nolan writing it, Snyder filming it, and I think that was like the perfect combo. And I hope we see that again. I think having like Snyder direct something and Nolan writing it would be, especially something original that like
yep.
Nolan, if Nolan were to have something that he wrote where he's like, you know what, I want to have someone else direct this so that I can do another film on the side, like that would be amazing again.
Oh yeah. Well, that's something I actually agree with. Like the anti-Snyder people, I do not think Snyder's a strong writer. Like I think he's a wonderful director. I don't think he's a strong writer.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I mean, he did some of the writing in Justice League, but it was primarily Chris Terrio, and that was again,
Who's
Terrio did
fantastic.
he did a fantastic job in BVS and the Snyder cut. And I'm trying to remember if Snyder wrote Sucker Punch or not, but I really enjoyed Sucker Punch
I did
personally.
too.
And Rebel Moon was not bad. To me, that was like a 6.5 out of 10. Like great visuals, some great fight scenes, some good, really good casting, some kind of meh. But you know, with a bigger budget and yeah, someone with a little bit of different writing style that had a lot of potential, but still fun. But I'm not one of those guys that's going to just glaze the whole thing because it does
Yep.
not line up with his other films. It just doesn't.
No, but it's a better Star Wars film than the sequels.
I would agree. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know
Yep.
what else Chris Terrio has. I don't know how to say his name.
He
Terrario has
did one of the
done.
Star Wars actually.
Oh, did he? Which one?
Let me look it up. I
Was
can't
it the
recall,
last
but
one?
he
Was it
did.
Rise of Skywalker?
I don't know if it was I want to say it was the second one. Let me check IMDb. But yeah, I was surprised. Like he wrote one of them. Now I'm sure he was writing within a very tight box,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of Disney. But let me take a look. Yeah, he doesn't have like a huge
I don't
like
know, man. His
list of
work on
writing credits,
BVS
but
is fantastic. BVS
yeah.
is, in my opinion,
Oh,
the
he
best
wrote
comic book
Argo.
movie.
He wrote
Oh, there you go.
Argo, which was fantastic, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Affleck directed that, so that was a great team. That might be how he got the job, actually.
Probably.
He did The Rise of Skywalker. Yep.
I know he had like a different script, I think, and then Ryan Johnson's eighth one just kind of blew it out of the water. But the only first of all, I don't like Abrams. I don't think he knows how to end anything. I think he has
Mhm.
great ideas, but when he tries to land something, he just peters out. I think Johnson is one of the worst like filmmakers probably of the century, and what a what a waste of potential those sequels were. What a waste.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's like you were saying, like the prequels, right, were pure cinema compared to the sequels. I mean, people shouldn't even complain about those. We would have been so lucky to have that type of quality on the sequels.
What I hope I kind of keep having this like vision in my head, and I hope it's something that we can see. I kind of feel like things are burning out. Like we're seeing it in indie comics, and I hope we're seeing it in art in general. like clearing away the chaff so that something new and cool can grow there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best thing that could happen is art kind of do that. Like I'm really glad, to get this big thing, the Odyssey, but if art can kind of go back to being this cultivating thing, then no one's going to care what these outrage merchants think. If people
Mm-hmm.
really like their thing, like these guys don't get big off of ripping like indie music or even anime and stuff because there's certain things that they know if they attack,
Mm-hmm.
that community is going to swarm them.
Oh yeah, and that's why none of them will give an honest review of Critical Drinker's movie, which was horrible.
Yep. I didn't even
Like,
see it.
well, I saw enough of it. It was bad,
Mm.
and that's what's so ironic about his criticisms is he didn't learn from any of them. I mean, his his film had like an OP female character, and his whole shtick has been, especially with Captain Marvel and Star Wars, right? Has been the Mary Sue character, and that was literally his main character in his film. It's like, really? Like, it was embarrassing, but not surprising. It's very in line with some of the comics, created by these YouTubers, that's for sure. So,
Well, uh, there's very few. I don't know what it is, man. Like it's not easy to make art. Like
mm,
that's just a proper statement.
good
It's
art,
not
good
easy.
art,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not easy to do that, and
Hmm.
it takes skills that you only get not just by doing it, but by observing and absorbing for decades. And even then, if you don't have some kind of raw talent, it's still not going to come through.
Hmm.
To be like a jerk, but it's like there's a reason I don't play basketball,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and if I had practiced since I was 5 to play basketball, I'm still 6'1", so it's not going to happen. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think people need to start seeing art the same way. Art is that same way. Where it's like, look, you can practice, or like it or whatever, but there's going to be a wall you're going to hit if you're just not naturally gifted in some way. And I think that's what we see with a lot of this, especially like I don't I believe in a divine eternity, so I don't like talking in zero sums. But if you're
Hmm.
spending all your energy making videos critiquing things, there's no way you're getting good at actually making art.
Yep, I would agree. Yep. Speaking of art, do you have like a page or two or something, cover you'd like to show for your upcoming sign up
Sure.
page? I'm gonna try to get my new extra camera kind of set up to do this comic review of the Deathstroke. See if I can
I've
get
got a
it.
cover. The sign up page isn't up. Let me pull the cover up. I'll send it to you.
Sounds good.
I'll pull it up in just a second.
I'm gonna remove myself for a second from the visual so I can get this other camera set up. Just bear with me.
What's up, Lucius, by the way? Nice to see you, man.
Of course, the camera worked when I first plugged it in, but now it doesn't want to work.
That's okay. I boomer these things all the time. Especially if you make any kind of change, it's like, oh god, like
Well, I knew trying to juggle two cameras was gonna be interesting. Try to get it to work.
let me see if I have anything else. I sent the cover to you in a an X chat. I might have another picture from Josh, another page.
Okay, let me pull that up. I think I got the camera to work, so we should be good after that.
All right. I might have another page. Let me see. If I get might be on my phone. Lucius, I'm glad you like the Odyssey, man. You should do a review of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do a review myself this weekend. I was hoping to go watch it a second time because every time you watch a movie a second or third time, you catch things that you didn't catch the first. But I don't know if I'll be able to peel away to do that. But I'm gonna try to get a decent review done this weekend. There we go.
Yeah, so that's the cover. And that for if each issue will be 24 pages. This one, the first issue, issue 1, will cover God condemning Saul because he would not slaughter the Amalekites, and choosing David. He'll follow David through his slaying of Goliath. That'll be issue 1. We're keeping it pretty close to the biblical account. We're not doing any modern take on it or anything. The only thing we're really doing is emphasizing like the bloody nature of David and his rise, because so many things like try to talk about this story and they don't do like the coolest parts of it. Which little thing, like David was like the first guts from Berserk. Like whenever he fled Saul, he like got Goliath's sword and led his army with it. So you got this guy wielding this like gigantic sword. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
Matt, like he was so bloody and so strong and so war hungry that, like, imagine you're a Philistine in this valley, and coming down the mountain you see this basically kid wielding this gigantic sword, and he's got the Ark of the Covenant coming behind him and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
all you've heard about this guy is that, hey, Saul killed hundreds, this guy has killed thousands. Like, that's a cool story.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And
And will this be are you gonna have multiple covers or are you doing just a single cover for this
that's
comic?
up to Josh. So far, he's just done one for this issue
Okay.
1. If he wants to do more, he might. I know we talked about doing like maybe a Berserk homage with like David on the hilltop with like the sword behind him in like a lion skin,
Mm-hmm.
like a covering, something like that. But I mean, you know us, we're pretty back to basics when it comes to our stuff.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I love the font on this too and the titling. That looks really neat and clean.
I
Yeah, that's
appreciate it,
definitely a
man.
brutal in a good way cover. I like it.
Josh's style tends to be he's got like kind of like a punk rock style that I like, and we felt like this would be a really good project for that kind of stuff, kind of over the top,
Mm-hmm.
true to the source material. It's not going to be anything undermining the biblical account, but it's not a Sunday school story. It's going to be there's this weird when you study the life of David, this weird fact you keep seeing that like all of his problems are solved by violence,
Mm-hmm.
and all the problems he has for the most part are caused because he wasn't violent enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
here's where you gotta thread the needle, I think, is God even tells David, like, hey, the sword will never leave your house. Like, you are the sword of God. And when you're 18, that sounds awesome. And when you're 45, that's quite the burden.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what you see in David's life. You see that whenever he was young and vigorous and warful, everything was fine. And then when the sword came for his own family, like when his son, one of his sons rapes one of his daughters, he won't kill him.
Hmm.
And it's, he's an old man, he's done with war, he doesn't want to kill his own son, so um Absalom, his other son, kills him instead. And it's kind of this weird. What's really interesting to me about it, especially since we're on the topic of the Odyssey and these kind of old pagan stories, which we wouldn't classify this as pagan, but I think we kind of should for the way we're talking about it.
Hmm.
What you see in the life of David is whoever is willing to shed blood is who is chosen. So
Hmm.
Saul is afraid. And for those who don't know, who's not familiar with the story, Saul was the king before David. Saul was afraid of his own men and would not slaughter the Amalekites because they wanted to plunder them instead. So God removes Saul, puts in David. David slaughters them. David slaughters the Philistines. But what you start to see is that that's how he becomes king. And then you see Absalom, his son, divides the kingdom in half in a civil war because he would shed blood and David wouldn't. And then David would not kill Absalom because that's his son, so it gets worse and worse. So Joab, one of David's mighty men, a great warrior, says, "I'll kill him for you." So he gets the throne back. But then when you see David dying, the son that he wants to choose, which is Solomon, is now in conflict with the son that Joab wants to ascend the throne. And so what you see is that, and on his deathbed, David tells Solomon, "The first thing you do when I appoint you king is kill Joab, my best friend." And you see this very old world thing that we don't like in the modern world, which is whoever is willing to shed violence basically gets to rule.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of our pitch for it. Is it's going to be very bloody, very heavy because that's just how it was. So
Hmm.
in a way, we're kind of just bringing the myth back to a biblical myth. That's how we're seeing it. Like whenever Samuel talks to God, it's big. It's his voice changes, the font changes, his eyes roll back, and he's channeling the Almighty. And his people cower whenever he speaks in such a way. And when he sacrifices, and that's in the biblical account, wherever he goes, the prophet goes, everyone's afraid of him. It's like, well, why? It's because he speaks for God. And it's like, well, this could be the greatest thing ever, or it could be the downfall of our entire nation. So
Hmm.
going
Very
back
cool.
to the importance of art and all this kind of stuff, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for letting me pitch it. The sign up page will be in August, but it's a really exciting story, I think. We're trying to really show how these myths have meaning.
Hmm. No, that's awesome. It definitely sounds enticing. Very cool. All right, so I think I have
Thank
my
you.
camera set up. I will try to adjust it to make sure I have the right lighting and all that. So bear with me. Yeah. So wanted to, obviously we talk about art. We talk a little bit about everything on my channel, but wanted to actually start doing some reviews where we're actually looking at the actual comic, looking at actual art, and I think I've been upfront with everyone. I was not a comic book kid. I was not exposed to comics until I was much older, and so by the time I started really reading them was about the time that I got interested in actually trying to write them. And now when I read, it's more of study material, right? I'm reading, rereading, just trying to learn the best I can so that I can make the best comic myself. And so I thought it'd be fun to just, as someone that's a little bit more new, I guess, to comics themselves. I don't know a lot of the history behind some of the characters, some of the stories, different versions, and all of that. With the exception of Frank Miller works and more, that's a completely different story. But just go through some different titles, one per week, and take a look at the art, the penalizations, and the way that these different writers and artists portrayed their characters and stories. Be kind of fun for folks that are really, really into this and have been for a long time, and also folks that are new to it or slightly new to it, like myself. So, what's going on, Katie? Thanks for being here. And thank you. Yeah, trying something different here. So, first, I have this is the first book I've ever pre ordered, and this is The Push the Wall by Frank Miller. And this is absolutely fantastic so far. This is in more of a autobiography style book, but there's a little bit of art throughout it. But just fantastic so far. It just dives into Miller's backstory, how he became who he is, and how he got to where he is, and kind of dives into his his methodology in terms of writing and drawing. So I highly recommend this to anyone that's into comics, but especially people that are trying to learn the craft. And I took the slip cover off, but I absolutely love this piece of art from Sin City. I love that he used it as the cover. Just fantastic. So
Oh, yeah.
highly recommend that. Everyone can get it on Amazon. So the book I wanted to go over today, let me do a different view here. Let me see how I can do this. Bear with me. Let me get, there we go. Perfect. All right. So this one is Deathstroke, the Terminator, number 12. So one thing that's interesting about this one is even though a bulk of the pages, the artwork was done by Paquette and Sadama, there's for some reason only 3 pages done by Michael Golden, and they're amazing. Not to say that the rest of the book, the artwork isn't great, but Golden's 3 pages are phenomenal to where you wish the entire book would have been done by him. Um,
Mhm.
but a little bit of backstory. Deathstroke is actually that character is what got me to start collecting comics. Uh, Maybe about 17 years ago. So again, I was only in my early 20s when I first started collecting comics. I only got into comics and comic book characters because of Smallville, because I grew up on a farm and there was literally no comic book shops anywhere near me. So
Where
when
did you
I had
train? On a farm?
yeah, literally, yeah. But the only reason I got into Smallville, and I guess this camera angle's kind of perfect for this, is, and I think people know this, I had my hand sawed in half when I was uh, going into my senior year. So as you can see, I
Jeez.
don't have any knuckles where they're supposed to be. They're actually way back here. And yeah, went through the entirety of the top of my hand. It almost went all the way to the bottom, starting
Good
from the middle
lord.
finger and over, whereas the index finger, it just like nicked the tendon. So they only had to reconnect the tendon here, whereas everything else was just reconstructive surgery. So
Well, then what
I
happened? Like a
was
table saw? Skill saw?
circular saw. Um,
Oh.
what was so crazy about this was, so I worked at a vet clinic, and I had my normal shifts there, and at the time, parents were going through a split, and so I had to try to make more of my own money so I could have a car and get to basketball practice and all that. And the day after I had just so a week previous, like I went to the Detroit Pistons basketball camp, got MVP there, things were going really well. And the day before this happened, I had gotten MVP and won the championship at a Division II basketball camp. And I had
Jeez.
been scouted for basketball. Like I was like on cloud nine, right? I was about to get a full scholarship and all that. Got offered an extra shift at the vet clinic, and I said, "Of course, I've got to, right?" And was just doing an odd job. I was helping someone build an air conditioning box, and I was just holding the other end of the board. It was an older
Mm,
gentleman operating the circular saw, and he's,
mm,
cutting through, and then he hit a knot in the wood. And because he didn't have the, proper guard on it, it was actually removed. I had no idea. I was a kid. It lifted the saw up, and it, like, the force pulled him forward, and then it
mm.
came back down literally right
Jeez.
through my hand. And I didn't even feel it. Didn't even feel it until I looked down and I saw the inside of my hand.
Mm,
Uh, so that essentially ended my basketball career ultimately. But because of that, I was just sitting in a recliner for like the next 4 months. I couldn't do anything other than walk. I couldn't even use my writing hand. I couldn't even do schoolwork or anything. So and I'm just trying to deal with basically at the time losing what I thought was my future. So my brother had bought me the first 3 seasons of Smallville, and I just binged them. Just watched it for like 3 straight months, and that's what hooked me on the characters. That's what helped me, have a healthy distraction, but also, see these characters, overcome hardships and things that I could relate to, and especially since it's the story of Clark Kent, right? It's Superman as a teenager. So much that was going on with him was relatable at that point in my life, being in high school. So after that, I found myself getting really into Man of Steel and the Snyder films, and the Deathstroke character from Smallville really got me intrigued, and then I started collecting comics, and this was one of the first ones I bought like 17 years ago. So yeah, that was a little uh, trip down memory lane there. So,
that's wild, dude.
going into Deathstroke, I'm sure people have seen the mask and whatnot on my shelves here, but I was always intrigued by the character design, especially the newer design where it's all black and orange. I love the combination of black and orange in terms of the color scheme, but always loved the mask design and the backstory to Slade or Deathstroke was very conflicting and deep and interesting. It wasn't just a goofy mercenary like Deadpool. It was a very conflicted man who had very extenuating circumstances and then finds himself kind of being on the border of good and bad, but also always chasing a challenge. And this story here does a really good job in covering a lot of those aspects. Um, and it's seen through the eyes, or I guess the tellings of 4 different characters. So, jumping into the initial page, this is one of the ones done by Michael Golden that I absolutely love the colors and the detail to his art here. And the beginning of the story is about how he's been captured by Superman, because of course Superman is the only person that could actually capture him. No one else was able to. And he's basically down and out. He thinks, well, there's no way I'm getting out of this because it's a metropolis jail. Superman's overlooking it, and he's finally lost that confidence because Deathstroke was always extremely confident and arrogant, and rightfully so because of his abilities. And again, these 2 pages here, I just absolutely love the colors. I
Mhm.
think this right here should have been the cover page. They should have swapped them. This is such an amazing perspective. I love the camera angle here, but this is just such a killer image here, and just that character design. I just in the suit, I just absolutely love it. But just some wicked face shots here and some different perspectives here, but absolutely love what Michael Golden did here. And it really accentuates, Slade's demeanor here, where, he's starting to think about his regrets, what he went through in his life, and ultimately him never being able to escape, at least in this mindset that he's in. And so, title of this is, Sympathy for the Devil, because a lot of people view him as extremely evil, devil-like. But you'll kind of, if you've read this, you'll know that you get some conflicting opinions on that throughout the story. And then obviously you get into the other artist's artwork for the remainder of the book until the final page, but obviously a very stark difference between the style and especially the color and the tone. But still very very good art though. And what I enjoyed about this story is even though it's not told through the eyes of Deathstroke or with his internal monologue, you get the perspective of Adeline, which is an ex-wife who he had some kids with, uh, who ultimately died because of him. You get her perspective on kind of her conflicting feelings around him and him being incarcerated. And then it jumps to, and obviously this is transformative doing commentary. I won't be looking at every page, but it gives you some insight into his abilities and how even though she has hate for him, she's still in awe at his abilities. How he was this man that could overcome any challenge, and if she was hired as a mercenary, he would always basically come in and take care of the job first, while also essentially trying to protect her at the same time. But yeah, some very cool fight scenes. I really like this close-up shot here where he's got the gun pointed at the guy's head here. But yeah, I also loved how he was just like a jack of all trades with all the different types of weapons. Didn't fully rely on just guns. He
There's also
also had
something
a
about
go ahead.
there's something about black ink on like that kind of paper that just looks fantastic.
Mhm, mhm. And that's where, like, for my comic, for example, I wanna have it City style where it's that again, not glossy paper, more newspaper style, but super thick. And
Hmm.
yeah, the black just really pops. The Sin City books, I just love the feel of them, the look of the ink on the pages. But that's where I do, even though I did my mini comic in the glossy, I regret it. I appreciate it without the gloss. Even
Yep.
covers, I don't like the gloss personally.
Yep. We always go with like what is it, matte, whatever the other one is.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
And then after they go over Adeline's perspectives, then it jumps to a mixture of the vigilante, Wintergreen's, and Scoops's perspectives in regards to him being incarcerated. Scoops, of course, wants him to be rescued. They want to release him. And one thing I really enjoyed about this book, personally, was this part of the story here where Deathstroke was hired to do a job. However, someone ends up killing the target before him. And he says, well, hey, I could have just walked away. Job's essentially done. But, he wants to make sure that he won't become a target of the person that did the killing. And after he tracks him, he finds out it's just this kid. And they basically imply that, he did something horrible. The guy that he killed, the target, did something really horrible, like to his mom, I believe is what they're implying, and that the guy was a monster. And the kid starts to feel regret, remorse, and you have this like heartfelt moment where again this is where you see the good in Slade, where he gets the kid to put the gun down and he goes up to him and says, and let me find the bubble here. So Deathstroke tells him to go home. The kid says, but I couldn't let him. And he says, no, I'm going to hell. I shouldn't have killed him. It's a mortal sin. I'm damned to hell. And I love Deathstroke's response here. He says, Surratt deserved, and that's the target. What he got? If you're damned to hell for him, heaven's not a place worth being in. besides you didn't kill him, I did. So of course he was going to basically say that he was the one that killed him so that the kid could leave and just go on with his life. But,
Mhm.
that's like that guidance that he was able to give that kid, which I'm sure part of it is like he wishes he would have done that for his kids because there's a lot of history there and things that happen. But I'm not always a fan of sympathizing with villains and making them sympathetic, but Deathstroke is one of those characters where you can't help but be sympathetic to his backstory, and you can't hate him, but you can't always love him. But this was just a really good sequence here. So that's a story that Scoops basically tells here to say, well, this is a reason why he should be out in the open because even though he's a hired gun, he does take out bad people. He also does save good people, and he has limits. He's not a mercenary that'll, take out women, kids, things of that nature. So did did love that sequence.
Oh yeah, you got a code of honor.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, some really good art throughout this. And I always enjoyed too the relationship and dynamic between Wintergreen and Slade, where Slade was almost like Wintergreen was like that father figure to him, and Slade was like a son to him. Some really cool shots like this one where he's jumping out of the plane to take out some dudes. And I also love, this is the nostalgia here, right?
Mhm.
Getting to see the advertisements for the old Star Trek cards. Like, man, I wish
Dude,
we were back in this
I've
time, and I
still
wish
got a
comics
deck
were
of
like
those.
this.
I've still got a deck of those in my garage right now.
Yeah. Like, man, like, it was great to be a kid during these times, but man, it would have been fun being an adult.
So you can afford stuff.
Yeah, and it just I don't know, it was just that to be excited about things like cards again,
Oh yeah.
versus social media and, I don't know, digital stuff, like, just it was such a cool time. But yeah, this is a really good book. I recommend everybody pick it up. Again, it goes through, you know, each side character's thoughts and kind of experiences with Slade, aka Deathstroke, with the women being very conflicted, not really wanting him to be alive. Adeline specifically wanting to be the one to eventually take him out versus Wintergreen and Scoops's experiences where they see more of the good-hearted parts of Slade and they want to rescue him because he has done good in the world outside of some of the bad that he's done for hire. And then the final page here is fantastic. Again, it's back to the Michael Golden art here with just that really dark tones with
Mhm.
the intense, orange colors here. And they kind of, they end this kind of alluding that, Slade got his confidence back. He remembers, his time and in the war where he was the only one that could get out of an impossible situation. And that's one thing that they talk about in the story is that impossible was his challenge. He was always trying to do the impossible. That's what kept him going. Everything else was just easy. It was run of the mill for him. And he finally gets that confidence once he sees his suit because, obviously the media and all of them, they want him to suit up to seem like a threat for the camera, right? And once he sees his suit, he kind of remembers like, oh yeah, I'm Deathstroke. Like I can get out of this. And it kind of alludes that that's what's going to happen next is he's going to find a way to escape from Superman because who else would be able to do it? So
Hey, that's like Lord of the Rings, Theoden, whenever he's freed from the curse, he has
mhm,
to grab his sword.
mhm,
Like that's the thing is like
mhm,
the man is it's an externalized symbol of his power and his legacy. Like no one has built the Deathstroke suit but him. No one
mhm,
wielded
mhm.
that sword but him. So it's like by externalizing his confidence, it's always there that he can go back to it and put it on.
Mhm. Yeah, and the one quote that was in here, I loved, again, going back to, the idea of impossible being the only thing that motivated him, but the
Mhm.
specific bubble said, "The impossible is the only challenge left to him." And I really
Nice.
like that quote. That feels very, very Frank Miller, but very well done, by the writer there,
Well, imagine
which
the movie we
was
could have
Grant.
gotten of Batfleck versus Deathstroke, you know?
Oh, I know. I hope someday that script gets released, or we're lucky enough to actually see it come to fruition. And the other thing I recommend people watch is there was recently, I mean, for the release of this Push the Wall book, they did an interview uh, where Snyder actually interviewed Miller, and that was one of the things that came up. One of the questions was, when are you going to do a Dark Knight film? And Snyder joked around. He's like, "Well, I have a little bit of experience working with Miller and just copying and pasting a comic into you know film version." And he's like, "Well, it's whenever they let us do it." He's like, "The legwork's already done by Frank." So, and that's the thing that I talked about it last week that I love about him specifically is when it comes to like source material, like specific adaptations, he wants to work with the person that created it. And he actually
Mhm.
had Miller there, helping him write and direct 300. That's why it was such an amazing adaptation and it was faithful. And you imagine those two teaming up, and it needs to happen, right? Miller's not young anymore. Like they need to do a Dark Knight movie that he can be a part of. And that's what Rodriguez did with Sin City. He actually had Miller writing, directing, getting involved, and I mean that's why it was exactly like the comic. And they need to do that with Dark Knight Returns. They really do, and I think Snyder would be the perfect fit for Miller. So
Oh, yeah, it's a no-brainer,
we'll
and any other
see.
time like, in any other time in entertainment history, they would have done it from day one.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, if Jim Shooter was still running things, not at DC, but, like, that kinda guy was in charge, they'd have been like, "Hey, we gotta put out, like, 5 of these movies." Like, make it happen.
Mhm. Yep. Let me get my camera back here, and then we'll take a look at some script. Let's see. Change camera. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So last week showed some preview art, and was kind of talking a little bit about my scripting process. And one of the things I talked about is I actually write it on paper first, and then I'll convert it over to a Word document and obviously edit in the process. I did that with my novels to an extent too, just to give that kind of extra opportunity to edit. And about how, maybe on my Word document, I'm up to like 50 written comic pages, but it's
Nice.
actually like 200 Word pages. So a lot of text, a lot of detail. And yeah, I figured I'd maybe give a kind of a teaser into that, go over one of the pages that I showed folks the art and show them the script itself so you can kind of see how I do the layout and uh, kind of what my approach is. So let me pull up the art first.
Man, that's a really cool idea. I can't remember the last time I saw, especially someone in the indie sphere do that,
Mm.
like, ever.
Yeah, and there's something about writing in pencil that I just find therapeutic. Not so much for a novel because it's like daunting because there's so much to write, but for a comic, since there's not a lot of actual text, like I really enjoy not being chained to a computer, like just being able to sit somewhere without the distraction of the computer or the phone, just have music going and just doing it old school I don't know, I really enjoy it.
You also will tend to remember what you wrote down with your hand versus what you type out.
Yep. I agree with that. All right, so let me try to share the entire screen here. Let's see how this will work.
And a little bit of literary nerd talk for anybody in the chat that likes that kind of stuff. Vladimir Nabokov of Lolita fame, he would write, I think, all of his novels on index cards, and that's how he would do his novels.
That's interesting.
Yep, crazy guy.
Yeah. So this was one of the pages here from the first chapter, the first comic. Again, sign up page should be up in a couple of weeks. You'll see one blackout area here, which is a typo in the lettering we gotta correct. But so this is a sequence earlier in the book where obviously the hero Slade. No shocker where the inspiration for that name came from after doing that review. But Slade Island here, confronts this basically rapist in an alleyway here. And you get some initial interaction between the rapist and Slade to where Slade finally loses it and goes to protect the woman. So do a little zooming in on the panels here before we switch over to the script. And I'll try to kind of overlay them a little bit, but I try to make the panels all at least like kind of medium size, like these ones here, so that my artist can do as much detail as possible. So it's always that balance too, when you're limited in page count because of the cost of, you want to get as much on the page as possible, but not at the cost of giving up details and background detail even. So, I try to have kind of a balance between 5 to 8 panels. Obviously that's dependent too on if you have some small overlapping panels on a larger panel, but every once in a while I'll do, 2 or 3 panels if there's some dynamic shots that you're trying to get extra detail on or a splash page. But this one, for example, right, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, end of 10. But obviously 2 of them are true overlapping panels here. So let me pull up the script here. All right.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So let's see if I can. So yeah, as you can see, 32,000 words, 200 pages.
Good Lord, man. That's a
Yeah.
novella.
Pretty much. So what I typically do now, since, the nice thing is since this is a translation or adaptation from an existing novel, I can reference, the actual pages where applicable. So I can give my artist like, hey, you can read these pages before, during, or whatever, right, to get more details. And then I'll just start going into the panel itself. And I kind of fine-tuned it as I got farther down into the pages. But typically I'd start and just say, okay, here's the first panel. What's the point of view in terms of the reader, right? Is this a bird's eye view? Is this a ground up shot? Is this a direct side shot? And then I'll give some detail of, it's aimed at the right side of, character A or character B. But for example, this one, right, here's panel or first panel. It's a close up of the upper bodies of both the rapist and Rachel. And, the rapist has his head pulled back a bit away from Rachel and turned toward the reader / Slade. So artist did perfect job there. His face is calm, seemingly unaffected. And then Rachel's head is like slightly tilted, like she's gasping for air and trying to look towards the protagonist Slade here. Give him some, direction in regards. I want to have lettering for like a gasp sound. And then he came up with a good onomatopoeia for that. and then I'll indicate, right, all right, here's your first piece of dialogue here. Um, and I'll kind of give a little bit more detail in regards to the the face, drawing a blank here, but the expression on the face of the character. So with a blank face, the rapist says, get out of here, this doesn't concern you. And that's obviously the trigger for word bubble. And then, going into the second panel here where, I asked for a split panel, first half of the panel, second half of the panel, and then I indicate like here's where I want internal monologue where, and as mentioned, similar to Frank Miller, like I go very heavy in the internal monologue to get inside the character's head so that you know what he's thinking, what he's feeling, so you can get a deeper connection essentially with the character. It slows up the story a bit, which I like. And it's intentional at times, but it also just allows you to go a little bit deeper beyond the surface than just you know trying to show every feeling, which is going to add a lot of additional art where we don't have that luxury. So instead, do the internal monologue. I also like that it slows the reader up a little bit to really focus on what's going on in the panel versus just breezing through the panel because you're just trying to go from panel to panel. Which I think with some of the surface level books, that's what you end up doing. You just breeze through it so quick that you don't get a lot out of each panel or what's actually should be explained in each panel. And then, obviously, it's clear that's an indication here with the solid box there that that's internal monologue. And then, similarly, I did that with the third panel here. Just trying to give the artist as much detail of what's going on in the shot, the facial expressions, the fact that she's got tears running down her face, um, that she's reaching out with specifically her left hand towards the protagonist here, Slade, who's looking around the corner into the alleyway here, and then again just indicating what's the first dialogue, second, and third, who it's coming from so that he can link those bubbles where needed and have the proper sequence.
BA, do you draw at all?
No, well, I can recreate pieces decently for a noob, but I definitely cannot draw anything from scratch. I don't
Okay.
have any skill whatsoever in that.
Well, you must
In
have
regards
some
to
kind
that.
of like artistic eye, like the way you're describing things. So, like, it seems like you've got these images in your head held really well before you write them down.
And I think that's just from being so into film. Like I imagine everything as if it's being shot through a camera, and I'm basically doing a film script, and that's where, especially, I'll show like further down, like I get a lot more detailed in regards to camera angles, and if the camera's on a 45-degree angle or the character's on a 45-degree angle, like I can really. Well, I think like everybody, right? When you're writing a script, you're daydreaming at the same time, right? When you're writing a novel, you're daydreaming and you're kind of subconsciously typing out what's in your mind. And that's how I treat the script is I'm visualizing it as if it's a coming through a camera for a film. And I have this I think through what angles I want and I try to really hone in and be as specific as possible so that when I read the comics, it's exactly as I would visualize it in my mind versus letting the artist guess or putting more work on the artist. But again, as mentioned last week, like I tell the artist, like, hey, if you have a better concept for the panel, whether it's dialogue, facial expressions, panel size, POV, all that, like run with it. You have the most experience. I'm flexible on everything. I'm just putting out how I am visualizing it in my mind.
Mhm. No, that's
And
cool,
it's
man. This,
fun
this
too.
is this is insightful for me. Like, my scripts are, like, so hack and slash compared to this. This is I'm like looking at it, I'm like, "Man, this is really cool. This is a really cool way to organize things."
And like, this panel here, which, this is where, he took, his own kind of insight and making them overlapping panels to make sure that we could fit everything that I was hoping to get on the page in there, you know. So like right here where Rachel gets slapped, right? I'm specifically saying in one swift motion, the thug slaps the woman across the face, specifically with his right hand, forcing blood to spew from her nose and mouth as her black raven hair is brushed in front of her face and her head whips across to the right. And that's the thing too, like I find myself being very particular in regards to directions of things, right? Because I can only imagine how hard it can be on an artist when it's, if you were to just say, "Oh, the rapist hits the woman in the face." And then it's like he's got to kind of think, "Okay, what direction, which hand is he slapping with? What direction is the head going?" Because the thing is, it leaves it on the artist a lot of responsibility to connect that into the next panel or to sequences down the line, right? And I've seen this in indie comics too, where the directions are all over the place. Like, oh, you have the character right here, right? He's reaching forward with his right hand, and then one of the
Mhm.
other panels, it's flipped. And I think that's maybe because the artist or the writer wasn't very specific to prevent that from happening. And you don't want to confuse the reader of wait, you don't want him to stop in the middle of the page and be like, wait, wasn't the character over there? Wait, why is he
Mhm.
twisted around now? Like now I'm confused, and it pulls them out of the story, which that's what you don't want. You never want them to be pulled out of the story. You want them in there, like they're experiencing a film, for example. And so, like, I'm very, very detailed in regards to what hand, what body parts doing the movement, what direction is it going, and then on the opposite end, the receiving end, I guess you could say, making sure it lines up just so it's easier for the artist.
That makes a lot of
And
sense.
like here, for example, right? It wouldn't have made sense for him to tackle him from the left side because, as you can see, right, he's on the right side of the panel. Clearly, would have rushed at him this way, and so that's what happens. It's directional and it makes sense. Otherwise, it would be odd if he was going to the other side of the panel. So I try to make sure I don't confuse the reader or make it muddy. Oh, thank you, Lucid. So he says, that's a cool approach. I develop all of the backstory and character bios, and then based on all of that, I sketch out the rough sequentials, and then I write the script. Very cool. Yeah, I wish I had the ability to even do the rough sequentials. Like I can do panel layouts, and I do that occasionally, where I'll sketch those out. But man, I cannot cannot go beyond that. But luckily, my artist is amazing at taking reference material and sketching out the character, the roughs and all of that. That's one thing I rely on quite a bit, which from my artist feedback is reference material. Like I try to put in
Mhm.
actual shots from comics, films, like this, like, hey, right here, this POV, the way these characters are standing, or this facial expression, make it just like this, so that there's no guesswork. The artist can just go right into it. Otherwise, they kind of have to do a lot of extra work, and that just slows up the process. And yeah, exactly. You have the artist provide the thumbnail so you can catch it before the page is finalized. And that's where my artist would give me updates throughout each step so that we could make adjustments where needed and just made it a lot more fluid. What's going on, JJ? Thanks for being here. And then let's see here. But yeah, I mean essentially is kind of some insight, there, where I just and like here, I originally was going to have them be, and they kind of are like connective panels here, but for the fifth, sixth, and seventh here, um, just kind of breaking down like I want him to charge, to tackle, and then the rapist cracks his head against the ground. And like this panel here was one that he added where he's just like, yeah, I think it'd be cool just to show like that point of view here with the blood flying out of the mouth. And it just worked out, perfectly. And even like for really small details, and I think for this panel here, we're even going to add some details to the background so that there's not so much white space. But like
Mhm.
in the book, I specifically wanted to highlight that as she falls, because obviously the rapist is, got her in a chokehold up against the wall. So when Slade tackles him, she'd go crashing down. But that this necklace, which is crucial to the story later on, that it's in the image and that you can see that it's broken from her neck and is flying away because that necklace will come back into the storyline later on. And so, he again, I gave enough detail to make sure that that gets captured on the page somehow. Um,
Those little things are important, man. Like when you're going back through after something's drawn and you realize, like, oh, like this needed to be, this is crucial, and I need to
mhm,
highlight this. Yeah, that's to me, it's like editing is the most fun and the most awful part, especially after all the art is done. But I mean, little things like that, man. That's what's impressed me. Like you've got everything so well organized to begin with. Like that's really impressive to me.
well, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's funny that like I'd never tried to do any scripting for a comic before. I kind of just approached it in the same way as the novels, but it did it in bullet point format and just condensed each page from the novel into the comic.
Hmm.
But I did add a big sequence to the story in the comic that's not there in the novel, just because I thought it would enhance the story, and uh, it was just something that I thought the visuals would really, um, like that part of the story would really benefit from the visual aspect, which obviously I couldn't do in the novels. So, and like for example, here's one of the images I shared last week
Yeah.
with the front of the church. So here's the reference material right here. And, I told him, like, here, add some really gnarly looking gargoyles, right? Make it
Hmm.
unique. He did that. He added his flair to the design and, just was like, yeah, just basically crop everything else out, make it black, and then just focus on this part. And yeah, you saw obviously how detailed he went, even with the wood grain.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, so I'll give, reference material from real things, real places, and then, stuff from, I don't know, obviously
That's
there's
really cool, man.
the
This
church, right?
yeah. This
So
kind of
yeah.
stuff is I think like revitalizing to like the scene and to art in general. Like just seeing like the love and compassion, like passion and care in this.
Hmm.
Like this book is gonna be like technically good.
Hmm. I sure hope so. Definitely feeling good about it. But yeah, I mean, like even like I had one of the panels where it's like I'm trying to explain, in my head, right? I'm thinking like, okay, this is exactly how I image, the tensing of the neck, exposing of the teeth, the point of view, and it's like, oh, I found an image that lines up perfectly. It's like have my character look exactly like this and have the panel be laid out like this,
Yeah.
so it's super easy for him to basically translate it. So yeah, that's a little bit of insight into how I am scripting the comic, and yeah, as mentioned, the plan is to start with two 60-page books. So the first campaign will be for the first 60-page book. Second will obviously be for the second 60-page book. I originally wanted to do 90 to 100-page book, but with how things are growing in crowdfunding, I didn't want to get too aggressive. So I'm basically hoping to just do 2 consecutive campaigns so there's not a long wait in between the 2, but give myself a better chance to try to at least recover costs. I'm gonna make this happen no matter what, but um, if somehow I get really lucky and the first campaign funds really, really well, then I would probably just condense the 2 and give everybody more, but I'm not gonna bank on that. So maybe 4 years ago I would have, or 8 years ago, but these days it's definitely a tougher arena. So what's going on, Chris? Thanks for being here. So the next thing I wanted to do is, last week we talked about BackMeBro. I figured since the page is live, we could actually just take a look at it, see how it looks,
Hmm.
so folks can consider backing the Starlight Cats book that is on there, and kind of get ready to hopefully back more campaigns on here, and potentially ours and other folks.
Yep.
Yeah, it definitely
With
is rough.
that, it's late where I'm at. I'm gonna head out, man. But
Yeah,
I look forward to another. Thanks for having me on, and
dude, of course.
I wanted to get you on to talk deconstruction, the proper
Hmm.
comic deconstruction with our friend Brody we've had on before, and I'll line that up for us, man.
Oh yeah, that sounds good, dude.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right, man. Take care.
See you.
All right. Let me share my screen here and I'll pull up Back Me Bro. Yep. All right. And here we go. All right. So I do like how I ended up doing the logo and the coloring on that there. So this does have like it's really simple but clean. So I do like that. It's not overly like in your face, bright colors everywhere. Just really simple. And let's take a look here. Got the main tabs up here. Obviously, there's just the one project so far. Similar layout as Indiegogo here. Very self-explanatory. Yeah, exactly, Chris. Yeah, it's nice and clean. I hate when some of the sites it's like all over the place, really messy. This is really simple. Different categories up here. I'm sure eventually they'll have different. Yeah, I like the different filters here. Because even like Kickstarter, some of the filters are not great. Like it's really hard to see which ones are the highest funded and active at the same time. Which I like here that you can have it live and highest funded. Because I always had a challenge with some of the filters on Kickstarter. It was easy on the old Indiegogo. Well, the new Indiegogo, there's like barely any campaigns on there, anyways. So it's not even much of a point at looking at it. But yeah, I like how they have the different buttons here and then further sort options. So that's really cool. So let's take a look at the project itself and the layout. Yes, again, very clean. It's very obvious that you can tell here how many days are left. It actually really specifies when the campaign ends down to the specific time. That's cool. Yep, I like this layout too, with how it shows the percentage funded, the number of backers, type of funding here. Very good. What's going on, Jimmy? Thanks for being here. So Chris says web design is my jam. I'm a UX designer for the day job. Uh, Intuitive and clean designs beat flashy and difficult to navigate designs any day of the week. Yep, exactly. Now, this is definitely very promising. Let's check out the trailer here. Let me know if you can hear the sound. I always have issues getting the sound through. Just give me a yes or no. Ah, no sound. Hold on, let me reshare. I always forget to hit that one option there. Like if you share, I don't know, the entire screen instead of the window or vice versa, it doesn't auto select the share the sound. So let's redo that. There we go. It's not sharing. My gosh. I'm totally boomering this. Here, 1 second. I literally clicked share screen and it didn't share. There we go. Third time's a charm, hopefully. Yeah. Oh, StreamYard, you're killing me. Let me try this one more time. Fourth time's a charm. It unselected the slider. Why? All right. So whenever I choose the option to share the sound, share to sound, it says it denies me. That's why it keeps not working. So let's try to share the entire um, screen instead of the window. Still won't do it. Wow. This is not user friendly at all. Maybe it's because I have it expanded. Let's try this sound share. Nope. Should not be this difficult. Try this. All right. Let's try it. Let's see.
Growing up can be rough. It isn't always easy to make friends. Sometimes I feel alone. But then I met Barnaby and learned the truth about all cats on Earth, that they need my help. But the bullies are trying to stop our fun. Together with the Starlight Cats, I can collect all the jewels, so the Great Merlion will rise again.
Evil alien rats called the Bearkin live to devour all life forms. In this action-adventure 48-page graphic novel, Rebecca is swept up with the Starlight Cats into an intergalactic conflict. Together, they have to find the power to stop the Bearkins, who are determined to conquer Earth. Only Rebecca and this elite team of cosmic-powered felines can summon the magic needed to end this universal infestation. This is Starlight Cats Book 1, Merlion Rising. Back this project today, only on Indiegogo.
Obviously, only on on BackMeBro now. But yeah, very cool. Oh, that looks a lot of fun. Obviously, a very good option for kids too there. Some sweet art. Let's see. You know, they have some kind of messaging down here. So it's upfront and obvious. You know, mentions that you charge immediately upon checkout since it has a flexible goal, which I do like that option. I'm not a fan of the charge like, 2 months later. I'd prefer to just, see it on my credit card account or whatever, be able to account for it and move on versus like, oh yeah, then it hits you 2 months later. But yeah, this campaign specifically has, bonus 16 pages for this BackMeBro launch. So you'll be getting a bigger and better book than what was originally funded. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely good to have some of the creators out there doing some kid-friendly books. Personally, I don't know if that's something I would be able. I'm sure I could do it. I don't really have an interest at the moment, but it's good to see other folks that have that kind of capacity to do it. But again, yeah, very clean layout here in regards to doing the description for the book. Yeah, I don't know if they'll have different options for font and all of that. Obviously, once some creators are able to put their projects in there, we'll get that feedback. But again, this is a very simple layout. I have to imagine, if it's this simple in regards to the viewing, hopefully it's very simplified as well for the creator when they're setting up the campaign, like the old Indiegogo. Looks like they're giving some challenge coins for this campaign. That's cool. Yeah, same layout here in regards to the description. Can insert whatever art pages you need to. And then for the different tiers down here, over to the side. So yeah, very, very easy and self-explanatory in regards to expanding the details. So I do like that layout here and the pledge options. So, on top of checking out the site, obviously everybody that hasn't backed this campaign definitely recommend supporting not only the site but Shane and Yanzi and backing this campaign. I do have hopes for not just the site, but that this will not necessarily reunite folks, but hopefully put a little bit of fire under folks to start promoting one another, not only in the spirit of helping individual campaigns, but helping the site, right? Because now you're not, I guess, supporting Indiegogo or Kickstarter financially. You're supporting somebody within the community, someone that can give back, literally, someone that can, promote folks on a very large channel and a large network. So it's mutually beneficial in many ways. And so I don't know. I have some faith that we're going to see more promo streams to promote the site and the creators on there, and hopefully this will motivate the creators, big and small, to do more promotion, more sharing on Twitter, to back more, get more campaigns funded, highlight some of the really high quality projects that are out there, and just get, at least CG specifically, get some higher funded projects like we used to and get back to the roots of funding. So excited to see where this takes everybody. In regards to when Shane's going to open it up to other creators, I'm not sure. He may have talked about it in some of his streams, and maybe in the next couple months or so. Not sure. I've already told him, I'm definitely interested whenever I can. If I get the chance to do a sign up page, I'd prefer to do it on here and have the campaign on there. When I launch it next year, I think it'd be just good overall to have it on here. And then I'd like to experiment with it on Kickstarter more from see if that can garner any organic kind of followers or backers outside of my, I guess, near sphere here. So, but let's take a look at what it looks like when you want to pledge. Let's see here. Yeah, the other thing they talked about is instead of having like just an add-on option where you have to add more shipping or as a creator at least, add separate shipping charges to each add-on item, or the FMC unfortunate setup where you can't do add-ons and you got to pay shipping multiple times. They have pre-calculated shipping costs based on like the size and the weight of your shopping cart, which I think is fantastic. So that's super smart. So I think that's going to make it easier for creators and backers to just put everything that they want, and then it's going to calculate the shipping versus having to worry about, oh, am I going to get charged double shipping? Do I have to go through these add-ons? It made it kind of tedious even on Indiegogo. So I think this really simplifies it for the creator and for the backer. So that's really good. So let's just kind of put a couple things here into the cart. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, again, really nice layout here. This is not complicated at all. Fill in your normal information. But yeah, I'm sure other folks will test. I'll do it myself as well separately, but going through the actual motions, getting to the shipping calculator. But I know it's supposed to be basically identical to Nine Lives, that website. And when I backed Inglorious Rex 3, it was really easy to create the account, really easy to get things in the shipping or the shopping cart, and the the shipping was really, it made sense. It was easy, and yeah. So I think this is going to be a really great resource for creators. And like I said, I really hope it really sparks the community to start promoting more, doing more promotion streams, and sharing each other's campaigns, and trying to get back to, hey, let's see how high we can get the funding on all these books, because I think that's what's been missing the last couple of years. So yeah, everybody check out BackMeBro, check out Starlight Cats. Share this in the chat here for folks. Let me stop sharing here. I also mentioned in the last stream, I also have a Ko-fi now. Any proceeds from that will just go towards paying for the, I guess, better options on StreamYards, as well as the comic itself will go right into art pages, so I can start getting some covers commissioned. That's the next step. I'm gonna have 3 covers from the book artist himself. I don't plan on really having different variants from different artists. I plan on having a cover for the black and white version, cover for the grayscale version, and a cover for the black, white, and bloody version. And then if I'm lucky enough to get enough funding, there'll be a version for the colors. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself there. So anyone who would like to support, there's the link for that. And then I, of course, have the novels themselves. If folks want to pick those up, I am, thanks to Patrick, fortunately couldn't be here tonight. I am dabbling with the idea of doing audiobooks for the novels to help raise funds for more comic pages and the project itself. So we'll hopefully, maybe I'll have that campaign launched. That'd be a good one to have on BackMeBro. It'd probably be the only audiobook that would be. So it'd be interesting to have that on there and try to raise some funds and get more stuff ready for the campaign, because the more pages I can get done, the sooner everyone will have the book and the sooner I can launch the crowdfunder. But I think I did mention I have 13 pages completely done. So that would be 20% of the book. So not too bad pre sign up page. So I'd like to have a couple more pages done for the launch itself, but that's where I'm at right now. I'll put the links to the novels there in the chat as well. Yeah, I think that's all I planned on covering tonight, unless anyone in the chat has any topics or things they'd like to discuss or pick my brain on. Plan on doing this again next week. We'll see who will be able to join next week. I think Patrick said he'll be able to join like every third Thursday, so maybe in a couple weeks he'll be joining. But yeah, excited to have more guests on here. Yeah, I'd love to have some folks with some active campaigns. Obviously, we'll have Patrick on here the next time to promote his book. Salty as well when he gets a chance to promote his. Godfo is mentioned when he has his sign up page. We'll have him on to go over that. If Shane would ever like to join to go over Starlight Cats and give some more detail on BackMeBro, I'd love to have him on as well. So, goal is to bring on individuals to promote their campaigns, do a comic review, and then do a topical discussion or two. Next week, I'd like to dive in more into the AI topic, especially with the George Lucas, his comments around AI, Nolan's comments around AI, this absurd notion that Musk said that he's gonna have Grok do an honorable and historically accurate AI adaptation of the Odyssey, which there's a lot of hypocrisy to peel away when it comes to that. But that's kind of the goal with the channel. And then if some steam starts to pick up in regards to BackMeBro and just again the notion of more promotion, I would like to have a panel promotion stream. I've been saying that for a long time. There's not a lot of active campaigns right now. And I guess a lot of the campaigns are fragmented across different sites, but with Patrick having a campaign soon, Godfo and Salty, some of the folks that I'm closer to, I hope to have all three of them on at the same time to promote, and maybe that'll get something like similar to Pimp My Comic going, to where we can bring on creators and have a panel take a look and give their thoughts on all the campaigns. I agree, Patrick. General Q is a cool dude. Cool dude. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate it. We'll be here again next week, Thursday, same time, 8:00. And I think EVS has a stream going right now, so maybe go check that out. And again, appreciate everyone. Excited to share more of my pages soon, maybe some script insight. And everybody have a good rest of your week, and God bless.